Hi, this is Steve Mayo again. Welcome back to part 2 of our presentation on the Vision EDC system. Hope you enjoy it.
In part 1, I covered the basic user interface and workflow. Part 2, which you are watching now, covers the more advanced features that set Vision apart from its competitors, and which makes Prelude Dynamics' Vision system much more than just an online case form, but rather an invaluable clinical trial management platform. A good example of these robust capabilities of Vision is the notification system. User notifications are sent when a predefined event occurs. They are used to notify the team members about events such as a new enrollment into the study, a randomization event, a serious adverse event, a breaking of the study blind, a new document having been uploaded, or the email that coordinators love to get, a new query. There is a setting in the Show Users area where the user can decide if notifications should be sent internally or externally as an email. So here's how it actually looks in Vision. We are in the Show drop-down for notifications. The easiest way to reach that is to click the little Vision icon whenever you see a envelope symbol over here. That takes you right to this drop-down section. Remember, the other ones are patients, sites, users, things like that. And we're looking at all sites. And we just have a listing here of notifications that were sent within the system. So anyway, that's basically the notification system. A far more unique feature of Vision is the ability to send messages on a future calendar date. For example, when a coordinator enters a visit date, Vision can set a trigger that will send a reminder in 30 days to the coordinator that the next visit is due. This capability is also a key component of the electronic trial master file, where triggers are set upon uploading a document. For example, when a coordinator uploads an IRB approval letter, Vision can send a reminder 30 days before the next IRB review is due. So back in Vision, we're looking at the Show Info area. Remember the drop down here, Show Info, and the Notifications tab within that section. And remember, every study is different, or can be configured differently, so this could be slightly different here. But Notifications tab will usually have two subtabs, a Pending and a Sent tab. Pending obviously are calendar notifications that have not yet been triggered. And then the Sent tab that we're looking at now is just an audit trail of the notifications that were sent. So this particular study here, Misty, is configured to send notifications based on certain documents. And that's what these are here in this list. And then if we switch over to, say, another study, let's go to the Clear 3 training study, the Notifications tab, in the Sent sub-tab, you'll see a series of calendar-based notifications based on patient visits. So this one says you have 72 hours to randomize this patient. Here's one saying that the visit is due today. So there's just examples of things that are triggered based on an event in the actual case report form. In the Show Users area, in your user account document, there is a setting where you can select whether notices should remain in the notification area alone, or if you want them also sent via email. Emails will have a link that, upon a login, will take you directly to the corresponding form where the notification was triggered. So now let's review some of the design elements that make Vision so powerful. When the project manager adds a new user to the system, the user is assigned a role. Roles control what forms, sections of forms, and even the specific fields on those forms that the user can access. Roles control whether you can view, edit, query, sign, or even finalize a form. Roles are also used to identify you as part of a group for the purposes of certain notifications. For example, serious adverse event notifications need to be sent to, say, the safety coordinator and the medical monitor. Using roles, the specific people in these groups can change, and as they get user accounts, without having to change the configuration of the EDC programming. Finally, roles can provide data for user selection list. For example, in the case form, there might be a question about who conducted a certain procedure. The list of names can be taken from a specific role, say investigators or coordinators, and presented in a drop-down somewhere in the case form. Most EDC systems can do simple calculations, but in Vision these can be very complex and pull data from throughout the system. Calculations in Vision have robust data validation so they can compensate for missing or invalid data used in the calculation. Vision can dynamically present individual questions, sections, or entire forms based on prior entries. For example, Vision will only present a pregnancy screening section if the patient is female. A derivative of the show hide functionality is what we call expandable sections. A toggle, in this case the plus minus icon in the second column, is used to collapse or expand a listing. This design element is used extensively in the document manager to show hide prior revisions of a document. So here we are in Vision in the Show Patients structural area, looking at a listing of patients. Notice on the far right hand side is the form states column, and as you roll over these little icons, it'll show you the name of the grouping of pages, which we call a tab. And so that gives you some information about the status of the tab, or the visit usually, what it corresponds to. But let's drill down into it. So there's a little plus minus expand tab here, is the point of the demonstration here. And you'll see it actually shows you the individual pages, and you can get the status, or the individual visits, and you get the status of an individual page. So let's drill down into a page. Here we are at the demographics page, and scrolling down here to the bottom, there's a sort of an inclusion-exclusion criteria section in this particular study, and a question about pass-fail and request waiver. So I'm going to request a waiver by clicking the button here, setting the patient status. When I save it, it'll set it to pre-screening waiver requested automatically. It's computed. And if I continue to scroll down now, I have this new section on the form where I actually request or can fill out information about my waiver request. Many times in a clinical trial, you will need to collect information, but you cannot anticipate ahead of time how much data there's going to be. A familiar example would be something like a concomitant medication or adverse event. You don't know how many there's going to be. The Vision uses a repeating table design to simplify the collection of such information. When you enter a row and save a form, a new blank row is automatically appended to the table. The concept of repeating tables also works on the form level. Forms can be dynamically added on the fly, as may be needed on a patient-by-patient basis. Generally, this is done by clicking a button in the floating footer, but it can also be triggered automatically. Let's say entering an adverse event with the SAE yes-no question set to yes, that can automatically add an adverse event or serious adverse event to the patient's database. Vision has the ability to pull data from anywhere in the system, whether it be a list of lab references stored in the site area, or even a list of site personnel who have appropriately uploaded their training documentation in the electronic trial master file. So I'm looking at a site demographics form in Vision within the Sites structural area from the drop down in the top of the menu bar. And this is the site demographics information, just information about the site. This section here is a listing of pharmacist contact information that was entered centrally to maintain the blinding of the study. The Lab Normals tab shows a listing of the site's reference values for lab ranges. And then there's a Documents tab showing a list of documents set up by the sponsor that are required by the site. And so this would be the generic site tab, and then you'll notice there are individual tabs for each person at the site. The study coordinator creates that by clicking the Add Personnel button at the bottom. We'll create a tab for each person on the delegation log, and here would be where you assign those delegated responsibilities and the person's name and their responsibilities. Anyway, my point is that certain documents here, such as I think this one, Thomas Jefferson, have the responsibility for being the person doing the ranking test. And there's another one that's obviously a ranking certification. And we'll see those again shortly. So let's return to list, go back to the patient settings, or patient area. Let's drill down into a case form, and I'll show you where those come into play. In this particular study, the baseline tab has a randomization section, and you'll notice here there is the list of pharmacists here that came from that site area that was set by the sponsor. So the site can select a pharmacist and maintain the study blind to prevent any randomization code from being sent to somebody other than an authorized individual. In the daily forms, there's a safety lab. Here's those lab normals that we saw earlier being pulled into individual lab tests. And then if we go out to day 30 in this study, there's a scales tab where we have a patient interviewer, and the examiner names listed here are only those individuals that have completed their certification training to be able to do these quality of life assessments. Vision is list-based. As such, it has tools to select what appears in that list. From the main list, you click the Search for Patients button in the footer. Enter one or more selection criteria, then click Apply to show a subset of the list matching those criteria in the main listing. It is an AND comparison, meaning the patient must meet all the criteria that you enter in those rows of selection criteria. You can create as many sets of selection criteria as you want by adding search forms. To remove a search selection from a main listing, you just click Clear in the footer. Summaries. From the list, you can click Summaries in the footer to view various pre-programmed charts, graphs, and data listings. A few of these summaries appear in virtually all studies, but most are custom designed according to the needs of the individual protocol. In situations where there's not a custom summary, you can use the Report Writer tool. Clicking Reports in the footer from the main listing takes you to a form where you can enter a selection of fields, and the system will immediately generate a report with those columns. Once you have built the report, you can print it or cut and paste it into Excel or Word document. In the floating footer on the main view, there is a button labeled Export. This button will allow you to build a set of criteria for selecting and exporting the study data. The export is presented in XML format, which is very universal. It can be saved to your desktop and opened directly in Excel or Microsoft Access. And when you do so, it will actually build all the data structures and the table headings. So back in Vision, we're looking at a list of sites here, and there's a lot of sites. There's 2 pages for us. So let's go and do a search criteria to narrow the list down. So we'll click Search for Sites in the footer. And I already have a search created here, but basically I just clicked Document Site in the Forms. I selected Doc List as the section. Status is the field I was interested in, and I want to select sites where the status is equal to final in the doc list, the doc list status. And I could name that as well, final docs. Say that for the future, and I can create new ones by adding searches down here. Anyway, I want to apply this search now to the criteria. We had 34 sites originally. Now we're down to 6 sites selected in this selection list. And now that we have this smaller list, let's look at summaries. Here's a list of summary listing of the document status. And we can look at a condensed or expanded view of that. The condensed view is just a lot easier to read, and you can roll over the little numbers in the header to pop up little boxes to say what the title is, or you can look at the full list that has the titles. There's a form status showing the status of their case forms, a visit status showing status of the patient visits, and an enrollment status report, and these are all custom developed for this particular study. So let's return back to the list, and to clear this selection criteria, we go to clear in the footer and click that. Also, from this main listing in the footer, there's we just looked at summaries. There's a reports and an export button. The reports button gives you a sort of a mini report writer, and this is the print view. You've got a couple other views. Let's look at edit view. In edit view, it's very similar to this patient search criteria, where you go through and you create a listing of different fields that you want to select by. And once you have this report, you can cut and paste right into Excel or Word or whatever. Or you can click the print view button to hide the top, and then just print this, and it'll take out all the background effects. So returning back to the list, and then the final one is export. And the export is very similar. There's a selection criteria, and you go through and you pick what forms you want to select, or forms in a specific status, let's say. You want to select all the final forms. And then when you click the apply button, it will build that list and pop up a box to save it. Last but certainly not least, there is the Vision Electronic Trial Master File, or ETMF. This is a rudimentary document management system designed specifically for clinical trials. With this tool, you can completely eliminate the need to maintain site regulatory document files and even the separate sponsor shadow document files. My company, Emissary, developed the concepts and specifications for this functionality. Our main goal was for it to be easy to use, but nonetheless, it still handles revision tracking, private documents, version status, and comments. As we discussed earlier, the ETMF is fully integrated with the notification system. That means that whenever a document is uploaded, it can send messages to roles, such as the coordinator role or the investigator role, or even to specific individual users. It also collects metadata. For example, the date of an IRB approval can be entered, and that can be used to then trigger a calendar-based notification that sends out a notice when that document requires revision. The Electronic Trial Master File spans several structural areas in the Vision system. I've showed you the notification tab before. Let's look at the defined documents. This is an area where the sponsor will go in and create, using a repeating table, a listing of documents that are required for the study, such as signed 1572 and a copy of the IRB approval document. Each one of these can have these metadata associated with them. For example, on an IRB approval, you might want to know the date approved, the protocol version, the next review date, and the next review date in this example has a calendar trigger associated with it. So in 60 days before the next review date, whatever the coordinator may enter there, it will fire a calendar trigger. The last two columns, if I scroll over here, are the questions about who to notify on those triggers. So this first column is sent out immediately when the document is uploaded. We'll send a notification to the data manager and the study coordinator. And the calendar trigger over here for IRB approval, let's say, is we're going to notify the principal investigator and the study coordinator, the project manager, and the data manager 60 days before the IRB review is due that this new document needs to be uploaded. Also, on the defined docs, that was the site documents. There's a personnel documents where you define documents specific to a particular person in the study, so financial disclosures, CVs, for example, and say what responsibilities have that somebody may be delegated in the study or associated with those documents. So responsibility number 5 in this case, which is the responsibility to obtain informed consent. We require a financial disclosure from anybody that's obtaining informed consent, and the metadata associated with those documents that will be uploaded in the site section. And then there's a patient documents tab, which lists the various types of source documents that we want to see uploaded for each patient. So switching now over to the sites area, special area, and let's drill down into this particular site. Here we have the list of documents that we saw earlier defined by the sponsor, the metadata fields that the site should enter as they upload the document. And as we scroll over, here's where we actually browse to find the document on the desktop, upload it, and it tracks all that information. And scrolling back up here, number 7 down here, here's one of those expanding lists we looked at earlier for IRB approvals. And in this case, we had an IRB approval from 2008, and then a new one that got uploaded in 2009. So it maintained that revision history, and we could go back and look at either one of these documents just by clicking on that link. So the other structural area to look at is patients. And let's drill down into a particular patient. There's a tab. I'll right out here to the tab. There's a source documents tab. Here's that list of predefined source documents that we expect to see for each patient and the upload controls for that. So there are other project management tools that can be added to a specific study. These are just what was programmed for this study that employ various aspects of the document manager. Another example would be, and I think we have one here, where you might want to track monitoring reports. And let's see, that was visits tab. So here's a form for tracking monitoring reports. The CRAs can upload their visit reports and share information with the sites, or keep that internal, whichever. Another example might be a form and a process to track budgets and contracts and investigator payments. The nice thing about that one is that you can use triggers within the case report form, such as the completion of a visit, or entering of a lab report or a chest x-ray, let's say, and then associate payment criteria with that, so that maybe the site gets paid $100 for every lab, and the system can keep track of all that and present an invoice and a payment process and those types of things. So Vision, unlike a lot of the other EDC systems out there, can do a lot of project management type stuff, and it's very extensible, and this document management system really takes Vision a step beyond what you typically see out there for an EDC system. Now that you've seen all that Vision can do, your next step should be to complete and submit the Advanced EDC Training Certificate and execute the EDC User Agreement to obtain a username and password to access the live site. As discussed in Part 1, there are a number of additional resources available to you as shown in this list. If you need additional help, as always, feel free to call upon any of the staff at Emissary. And Prelude usually maintains technical support helpline as well. So we're all there to help you succeed. Thank you very much for your attention and invaluable participation in this trial, and we all look forward to working with you.
The limb footbeds are only depressed in the surface about 1 or 2 inches, although the surface appears to be very, very fine grained as you get close to it. It's almost like a powder. Ground mass is very fine. Yeah, I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man,